I'd like to talk here for a moment about what it means to have a relationship with God from the Christian perspective. There's a lot of talk out there about spirituality and it being about a relationship with God, and that's great. And that's also the language that Christianity uses. It is a relationship with God, or we should think about it as a relationship with God. It's unfortunate that over time, I think in a lot of ways, people have tried to frame Christianity as a moral code, do's and don'ts, and that sort of thing, and therefore it has become religious and only that. But it is supposed to be a relationship with God. Now, what does that mean? With regard to Christianity, it means two things. The first thing is simply this, that a relationship with God is when two persons or entities are able to relate or interact. They're able to communicate in different ways so that they might get to know one another. Maybe it's written, maybe it's oral, body language, whatever it is, there's communication between two things so that they can get to know one another. And Christianity certainly has that as part of its definition of what it means to have a relationship with God. We should be communicating to God. We should be praying to God, communicating in different ways, and actually trying to hear and experience God communicating and relating to us. That's what it means to have a relationship with God, according to Christianity, in the first way. But there's a second way that we are to understand a relationship with God, and that is with regard to the definition of the relationship itself. With regard to any two entities that relate to each other, there is usually a definition of that relationship. Think about the example of an employee and an employer. That is a definition of the relationship. And yes, they communicate, and yes, they interact, and they get to know each other, but there's also a definition of where they stand with regard to one another. And Christianity has that as the second part of its relationship definition. First, there is the communication. Secondly, there is the definition of the relationship itself between these two entities. And that leads us to this question. How does God define the relationship with Him and us?